Doc Slab Audio on music production and audio engineering. Welcome to Doc Slab Audio and our 5th Master Series. I do believe this is the 14th video in our 5th Master Series, Professional Sounding Results from Your Home Studio. And this is the 3rd video that we'll be talking about microphone concerns. So first of all, before we get going, if you've watched last couple of videos and dealt with all of that, we've got some fine tuning to do. So the biggest thing you want to keep in mind is your biggest issue is probably your equalization. The power of equalization is monumental and will more than likely solve most of your problems. Secondly, we get into the difference between an inexpensive microphone, an expensive microphone, or a different expensive microphone is a lot of times, besides the equalization, saturation, and a little bit of noise. So you take like a really expensive microphone that it's going to have maybe tube warmth and noise that's added to it. That's a combination of even and odd harmonics, a little bit of saturation and noise that makes that sound beautiful, that it really dithers and smooths the vocal there and whatever you're trying to record in a very slight way that is pleasing to the ear. Plus, it helps it to blend with whatever it's being mixed with. So it's just all around a good thing, right? So really super hyper clean sometimes is not the best thing. It just keeps coming out sounding too hyper clean and too bright and too, and it's just not blending with the mix, which people will sometimes have a fit about because we're not doing scientific work, and the human transducer and a lot of other things we're dealing with are not set up scientifically so refined that it's so smooth or set up to where you want it to be that way. It's really kind of a conundrum of lo-fi, hi-fi mergence that comes out sounding really great, right? So basically, whenever you're dealing with that, then when we get into the microphone, that there's a couple different things. First of all, don't blame the microphone for you not doing good editing and processing. Never do that. Remember, the transducer, whatever transducer you're dealing with, is more than likely producing different types of noise, saturation, distortion, harmonic content, which I talked about thoroughly and equalization and frequency modulation and volume modulation that I talked about thoroughly in my 2nd Master Series. What we're dealing with our microphones is normally a lot more slight work that's not quite so, it's little light adjustments that really make the difference. So when we get in there and start talking about that the power of equalization is huge. Also getting things in order right. So we're going to talk about that in order as I go along here. This is that $99 to $200 Sennheiser dynamic microphone that I showed you in the last video. And it would sound better with my condenser microphone, even the AT2020 I showed in the last video, but we're going to work with this very inexpensive microphone to make you understand. Now, the difference between making an inexpensive microphone sound expensive and making an expensive microphone sound more like a different expensive microphone is normally slight adjustments with your saturation, noise, harmonic adjustments that you use something like hat trash to, and slight equalization differences, normally almost always. So just kind of keep that in mind. So if you're trying to make adjustments there. So basically, we start out at the beginning, we do, this is, if I turn all this off and say, This is that $99 to $200 Sennheiser dynamic microphone. This is what it sounds like. It's kind of harsh, kind of brittle, doesn't have a lot of body, and it's kind of sterile sounding, and it's picking up stuff that it's kind of a problem, right? And if I turn everything on here that I've put on here, the difference on there of this $99 to $200 microphone is immense. So, I mean, you can sing through this, and you can't blame the microphone for other problems, or you can't sing also. You got to get that through your head. But it will give you professional sounding results with no doubt. So we start out with, we've got good low and high pass filtering for the situation. We've checked out it's my vocal, and so I've gone through there and high-low pass filtering according to what I'm dealing with. Get that done first. Do a good job of that. And if you have to do some notch filtering, like you got a little cut here or a little cut over here or something like that, just subtractive EQ work, then get really good at hearing where there's issues there and subtracting before you do anything else. After that, you have the frequency response compensation equalization we talked about in the last video, compensating for the problems and reversing the problems of the frequency response of the microphone so we get a nice flat frequency response. After we've gotten done with that, then we basically want to go on there and add either even harmonics, odd harmonics, saturation, things like that, non-harmonic distortion, which normally you're getting some even and odd harmonics. I have presets for Trash 2 here that I can send you. Then there's extensive videos on my second video about sound sculpting, noise, saturation, harmonic content, and things like that. But normally in here, it's very light work. And as you add it in there, it's adding this saturation that is going to give it a little bit more warmth to the sound. It kind of dithers and blends and smooths the sound that you're talking about. Plus adds a little bit of, dirt, because it basically is, but it sounds more pleasing to the ear rather than this harsh, stark, naked sound, a lot of times in a lot of situations. So it's beautiful to really get used to using a plugin like this properly to add those things to mimic that effect without having to spend $20,000 on a microphone, right? It takes some time and it takes some work, but it's very slight adjustments and additions that really get it done. Now, after that, we've got equalization. We've got our other equalization. In my second master series, I talked extensively about equalization, working with the equal loudness contour and then doing additive EQ where you want. So I've decided this is 40% of the equal loudness contour that I've set up on here. And I didn't use it in the high end because it added too much brittleness in high end, so I cut that out. Now, I might have not done this. Somebody else might not have done that, and they might have added the high end for some situation, and that sounds better. Or the low end and the high end, and cut that out, and it sounds better in this situation. So it's an opinionated thing, but make good decisions. Take your time becoming a connoisseur in music when you're making these decisions. You might have also boosted this up a little bit more, or subtracted that a little bit more, or subtracted that a little bit more. You may you're trying to sound like Howard Cosell. You sound more like Howard Cosell like that, bro. And it's well, that was a little too much like Howard Cosell. So that's the next thing. After that, additive EQ. Getting another EQ on there, sweeping around. You've got a little problem here. After all this equalization work, you want to boost up a little here, or maybe boost just a little bit right there, or do a little subtractive EQ there, or a little subtractive EQ here or something, just to fine tune it as best you can. It's work, but in the end, you get this great sound. So after that, you've got reverb. We talked a lot in my second master series about body building reverb. That's a personal choice. You have to experiment with that. But even normal reverb, after I've added a small hall in here, I've added it to it because the reverb, after everything else, adds this blending, smoothing effect, blending all the stuff together that I've done so far. All right, and then after that, I've gone through and put another high-low pass filter on there to clean it up. so that there's not stuff that I've added in there that's going outside of those bounds and causing issues in the upper and lower end again, because sometimes it does. And then after that, I put a mix tool on there to boost the signal a little bit, a compressor to anti-transients, just really light with a really soft knee, and a limiter just to catch anything if it rolls out. So basically, if you look at this, what you got going on is you got this Sennheiser microphone. Now, before I go, I've got the Sennheiser microphone. So I add, first of all, I add that high-low pass filter on there. You can immediately hear the difference when I turn it on. It's cut out high and low content that is an issue. Next thing, I go to that frequency response compensation reverb, and I add that in there to this $99 to $200 microphone. And you can immediately hear the frequency response has been flattened. You've got a pretty good sound there. Then you go into adding some harmonic content, saturation, some even or odd harmonics, that tube warmth kind of sound, that because in hardware and those kind of things, sometimes it's adding this sound and noise that's, that is just unique. So you got to kind of experiment. But I go ahead and add that in there, and you can hear the saturation immediately. After that, I've gone through and done any equalization I work. So I go into that, and then you hear the difference. All of a sudden, I've done some more equalization work. You hear the improvement. After that, I've gone through and I've added some reverberation really lightly, that it's not like reverberation. I mean, if I turn it on and you can hear the difference of what's happening. It doesn't look like much. It's a very small hall at 50 milliseconds. I talked about creating impulse responses in my second master series. If I turn it off, you can hear the difference, how it sounds cleaner, but a little more sterile. But with it on, you don't really hear a lot of reverb. It just added body. Because if I sing, hello, hello, you're not hearing this echo thing going on, but it's added a lot of body. And then I've done that subtractive EQ work. You could hear the fan. You can hear it disappear a little bit, but you can hear in my voice the difference. I've boosted the signal a lot, and then I've put a compressor on there to hit any transients, and then the limiter. So basically, in the end, that you have this microphone that's really going to capture really well like that, so that you've got this $99 to $200 microphone that basically sounds like this. And you've kicked on that, you've got a very rich, well EQ'd, nice microphone that has very nice presence for, if you can't sing, it ain't gonna do you that much good. But if you practice singing, that you can get some really nice sound, no matter what you're trying to do. And you probably want to adjust it for we're doing different kind of stuff. Lastly, I've got a noise file on here with a gate. So basically what's happening here, this takes a little bit of work adjusting the gate. And you can either just put a noise file all the way across the length of whatever your capture is, or you can do that, or automation. I talked about that extensively in my second master series. But you can hear the difference. The saturation we put on there is one element of that analog warmth that we love in some gear and some equipment that costs so much money sometimes. But that's just with that saturation. If I add the noise, it adds a whole nother element. That noise is now going on there on top of it. So if you listen to it without it, you can hear it like that. And if you listen to it with it, you can hear the saturation come in. And basically it's a gray noise at very low decibel level that the gate's allowing to pass when I speak. And what it's doing is it's blending all that other stuff that we did. It's like dithering almost. Analog dithering and warmth that's blending all like the analog tube stuff together, the saturation for that, the equalization work, the reverberation, everything that's been done. It's just helping add these soft, smoothing tones. You can get harsh if you want, but a lot of times you'll find that something like this, it kills that sterility also, the saturation and the noise, that it's amazing that if you turn everything off, I turn off the noise and I turn off all this stuff over here, that you go, wow, dude. And, and if I turn it all back on, you've got just that stuff we talked about that is, unbelievable improvement. And when I go to add in the noise, it's going to blend that together and add this element of like dithering saturation that takes all that stuff we've done, especially the saturation components, and it helps blend it, like dither it and smooth it and blend it to where you get this analog warmth sound with this gray smooth noise that has an equal loudness, contour, shape that is just, I mean, you end up with a microphone that if you work on it well enough, you can make a $99 to $200 microphone sound like a $10,000 microphone. And if you have one you can spend a little bit more on, you won't have to do as much work, and you can make it sound like a different sound. This is my $99 Sennheiser. If I was using my AT2020 condenser, it would sound way better. And I'm telling you, you can send me a $10,000 microphone and you would not be able to tell the difference when I get done between that and a $99 microphone. I'm not going to say $20 microphone because I've tried that. I can't say that I had that much luck with that. There were some other issues happening there, but with self noise and it's noise in the system that with the components, because the components were just so inexpensive that it caused harshness and brittleness that was really hard to deal without putting it in something like RX. But there you go. I mean, that is the difference. So that, those concepts you practicing and working with, that's where you want to go. Just be careful. It's normally very light enhancements that cause that to happen. So peace, hope, love. I certainly hope you enjoyed this next video in our 5th Master series, and I will see you in the next video.